Lumberjack spotted a strange lump on a tree. When he cut it down, he was shocked. He had an almost uncanny connection with the woods. He knew which trees were old, which were healthy, and which were best left standing. For him, the forest was not just a workplace. It was a place of calm, a place where he could think, reflect, and feel alive. One morning, as the sun began to rise and painted the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, Thomas set out with his usual tools, a sturdy axe, a sharp saw, and his worn leather gloves. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. Birds were chirping in a rhythmic melody, and a soft breeze whispered through the leaves. It was a typical morning in the forest, or at least it seemed typical at first. Thomas followed a familiar trail, one he had walked countless times. He moved slowly, taking his time to inspect the trees along the path. Years of experience had taught him to notice small changes in the forest. A tree growing a little taller, a branch twisted in a new direction, or even subtle signs of animal activity. As he walked, his sharp eyes caught something unusual, a lump on the trunk of an old oak tree. At first glance, it didn't seem like much. Trees often had knots, burls, or growths, and lumberjacks saw them every day. But there was something about this lump that made Thomas pause. Unlike the typical knots he had seen hundreds of times, this one looked oddly smooth, almost rounded like a small dome, and it seemed to have a faint warmth to it. The bark around it was slightly darker, and the shape didn't match the natural patterns of the tree. Thomas knelt down, brushing away the fallen leaves to get a closer look. He tapped it gently with the back of his hand, expecting it to feel like solid wood. Instead, there was a slight give, almost like it had a hollow underneath. A shiver ran down his spine, not from fear, but from curiosity. He knew the forest well, and nothing like this had appeared on this path before. He circled the tree, examining it from every angle. Small insects crawled around the base, but they didn't seem afraid of him. Birds perched on nearby branches, observing silently. Even the wind seemed to pause for a moment, as if holding its breath. Thomas decided to mark the tree. He carved a small symbol into the bark to remember its location, a habit he had developed over the years whenever he found something unusual. He stepped back, wiping his hands on his gloves, and wondered what could be inside. He thought about how strange it would be if it was just a natural growth, yet nothing about it felt ordinary. Over the next few days, Thomas found himself thinking about the tree constantly. He returned several times, each time noticing something new. One day he saw small footprints near the base, tiny, delicate impressions that didn't seem like animal tracks. Another day he noticed faint scratches on the bark, almost like someone, or something, had tried to get inside. He didn't see anyone around, and yet the markings were fresh. His curiosity grew stronger with each visit, blending with a sense of mystery that he had not felt in years. Even though Thomas was practical and logical, he couldn't ignore the strange energy surrounding the tree. He told a few fellow lumberjacks about it during lunch breaks, expecting them to share his excitement. Instead, most of them laughed or shrugged it off. "Probably just a weird knot," one said. "Old trees grow strange shapes sometimes," another added. But Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that this lump was different, that it had a story hidden within it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Thomas returned to the tree for a closer look. The forest was quieter now, the usual sounds of birds and insects replaced by the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. He stood before the oak, staring at the lump, and for the first time he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He touched it again, pressing gently, and felt the slight give under his hand. It was real. Something was there waiting. Thomas decided that he couldn't ignore it any longer. He would investigate, but carefully. He had been cutting trees for decades and knew the risks of approaching something unknown. He prepared his tools, checked the safety of the ground around the tree, and planned how he would approach it. In his mind, he imagined every possible scenario. Maybe it was a hollow filled with wildlife, maybe a natural growth, or maybe something far more mysterious. That night, he barely slept. He thought about the tree constantly, imagining the lump opening to reveal something extraordinary. Every shadow in his cabin seemed to resemble the shape of the lump, and every creak in the floorboards reminded him of the tree. He was filled with anticipation, but also with caution. He knew that curiosity was a double-edged sword. It could lead to incredible discoveries, or it could lead to danger if not handled carefully. The next morning, Thomas set out before dawn. The sky was still dark, painted with faint streaks of light. The forest looked different in the early hours, mysterious and quiet, as if it were holding its secrets close. Thomas moved slowly, stepping carefully over roots and rocks, his eyes fixed on the oak. As he approached, he felt a strange calm, a sense that the forest itself was watching him. Standing before the tree, Thomas took a deep breath. He examined the lump one last time, noting the slight warmth, the smooth texture, and the odd shape. He knelt down, brushing away leaves and moss to see the base clearly. Nothing had changed since yesterday, yet everything felt different. The lump seemed to pulse slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if it were alive in its own quiet way. Thomas ran his hand over it, feeling the texture, the firmness, and the hollow beneath. He could sense that it had been untouched for a long time, hidden from sight, and yet preserved in perfect secrecy. It was like a mystery waiting for the right person to uncover it. And in that moment, Thomas knew he was that person. He felt a thrill of anticipation, a mix of fear and excitement, as he prepared to take the first steps toward discovering what lay hidden inside the ancient oak tree. He stepped back, surveying the area, and whispered to himself, "Let's see what secrets you're hiding." And with that, he readied his tools, ready to begin the careful work that would uncover a mystery unlike anything he had ever imagined, after the mysterious oak had captured. Thomas's curiosity, he could not stop thinking about it. Every day he found his mind drifting back to the forest and that peculiar lump on the trunk. Even when he was at home, sharpening his axe or having a quiet cup of tea, his thoughts returned to the old oak. What could be inside? Why had he never seen anything like it before? And most importantly, what secrets had it been holding for so long? The next morning, Thomas woke earlier than usual. The forest had a different energy at this hour, quiet yet alive. The mist hovered low, curling around the bases of the trees like soft gray blankets. He felt an excitement that was almost electric, a tingling sense that today might finally reveal something extraordinary. He put on his boots, tightened his gloves, and picked up his tools. Today, he would begin the investigation. Thomas approached the tree carefully, taking note of every detail. The lump looked the same as before, rounded, smooth, and slightly warm, but he felt as if it was almost inviting him to look closer. He circled the tree again, this time paying attention to the smaller details. The knots in the bark, the way the branches twisted above, and the faint trail of disturbed leaves at the base. Something had definitely touched the tree in the last few days, though he could see no footprints that matched any known animal. As he knelt by the tree, Thomas noticed something he hadn't seen before: tiny, shallow scratches around the lump. They weren't deep enough to be dangerous, but they were irregular, almost deliberate. Whoever, or whatever, had made them had been careful. It was not a natural pattern. Thomas's heart beat a little faster. Could it be that someone else had been interested in the tree before him? Or had nature itself created this strange mark? The possibilities raced through his mind, each more mysterious than the last. Determined to find out, Thomas decided he needed more than just observation. He wanted to study the tree carefully, to examine it piece by piece without causing any damage that couldn't be repaired. He took out a small notebook and started recording his observations. The size of the lump, its position on the trunk, the texture of the bark, and even the subtle warmth that seemed to radiate from it. Writing it down helped him focus and feel more in control. After all, curiosity was one thing, but careful investigation was the key to discovering the truth safely. For several days, Thomas visited the oak multiple times. He set up small markers around the base, placed sticks to see if any animals approached, and even observed the tree at different times of day. Birds seemed unusually interested, often perching silently on the branches above the lump. Squirrels passed by cautiously, stopping to glance at the unusual growth. Even the wind seemed to change when it passed through the leaves near the tree, creating faint whispering sounds that made Thomas pause and listen. One afternoon, Thomas noticed something new. A small hollow at the base of the tree appeared slightly larger than it had before. Curious, he knelt down to examine it. It was too small for a person to fit inside, but it could easily hide small objects. He reached in carefully and felt a smooth surface beneath the dirt and leaves. Pulling it out, he discovered a small, weathered wooden box. It was light, almost delicate, and covered in a thin layer of dirt and moss. Thomas's hands shook slightly as he opened it. Inside were tiny carvings, some shaped like animals, others like strange symbols he didn't recognize. Thomas was both amazed and puzzled. These carvings were unlike anything he had seen in the forest before. They were intricate, detailed, and seemed to tell a story, though he couldn't understand it yet. He placed the box carefully on the ground and stared at it for a long moment, wondering how it had ended up hidden in the tree. His mind raced with possibilities. Had someone used this tree as a secret storage place? Was it part of a larger mystery? The forest, which had always been familiar to him, now felt alive with hidden stories waiting to be uncovered. Over the next few days, Thomas continued his careful observation. He began noticing patterns in the forest around the oak. Small footprints appeared near the base, but they didn't belong to any animal he recognized. The ground seemed disturbed in a way that suggested movement, yet nothing else in the forest had changed. Thomas realized that this tree, unlike any other, was a focal point of activity. It was as if it had been waiting for someone patient and observant enough to notice it. As he investigated, Thomas also documented the surrounding environment. He noted which plants grew near the tree, how the sunlight hit its branches at different times, and even how the wind seemed to change direction slightly around the lump. He began to suspect that the tree itself was special, not just because of the lump, but because it seemed to interact with its surroundings in unusual ways. It was almost as if the forest respected it, giving it a quiet presence that could not be ignored. One morning, Thomas arrived at the tree to find something unexpected. A faint trail of smoke curled in the distance, though he saw no fire and heard no crackling. The smell of something burning drifted faintly through the air, mixed with the usual scent of pine and earth. His curiosity spiked. Could it be a signal? Had someone else been here using the tree for something secret? Thomas approached cautiously, staying alert to every sound. The forest was quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves, yet the feeling of being watched lingered in the air. He spent hours that day examining every inch of the tree, turning over fallen leaves and branches, and carefully inspecting the ground. He discovered faint markings etched into the bark that seemed deliberate, tiny scratches that formed patterns too small for anyone to notice easily. The more he studied them, the more he felt that they were a kind of message, a clue left behind by someone long ago. Thomas's heart raced with excitement. He was not just uncovering a mystery, he was piecing together a story hidden by time itself. By the end of the week, Thomas had gathered an impressive amount of information. He had sketches of the lump, notes on the carvings he had found, and detailed observations of the surrounding forest. He even noticed subtle changes in the wildlife's behavior. Birds seemed more cautious, and small animals appeared more curious near the tree. It was clear that the forest treated this oak differently, almost like a guardian of its secrets. Despite all his careful study, Thomas knew he had to take the next step. Observing was not enough, he needed to see inside the lump itself. The hollow beneath the growth, the carvings, the faint warmth, all pointed to something extraordinary waiting to be revealed. He spent a long night planning, thinking about the safest way to approach it. He prepared his tools, practiced his movements, and even visualized every possible outcome. He would not rush. He would not make a mistake. He was determined to uncover the truth carefully and respectfully. The next morning, Thomas returned to the forest with a renewed sense of purpose. The mist clung to the ground, and the sunlight struggled to filter through the thick canopy above. He approached the tree slowly, studying it one final time before beginning his careful work. Every detail mattered: the position of the lump, the angle of the sunlight, even the sounds of the forest. Thomas felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. He was about to step into a mystery that had remained hidden for decades, maybe even centuries. As he knelt before the tree, Thomas took a deep breath and reached out. The lump felt warmer than ever, almost alive beneath his fingers. He pressed gently, testing its firmness and the hollow beneath. It was clear that this was not just a natural growth. Something was inside, something that had been carefully hidden and preserved. He knew that whatever it was, it had waited patiently for someone like him to discover it. Thomas worked carefully, using his tools to examine the lump without damaging it. Every movement was precise, every touch deliberate. He felt the tension of anticipation building with each passing moment. What secrets would be revealed? Would it be something valuable or something far more mysterious and unusual? The forest seemed to hold its breath alongside him, as if aware that an important moment had arrived. Hours passed as Thomas worked methodically. He cleaned the area around the lump, cleared away debris, and gently probed the hollow beneath. The carvings he had found earlier seemed connected somehow, as if they were part of a larger puzzle. His mind raced with questions and possibilities, but he remained focused, patient, and careful. He knew that the truth would be revealed in its own time. By late afternoon, Thomas had made progress. He had discovered that the hollow extended deeper than he had first thought, and that the lump itself was not solid wood but a protective shell. Beneath it, there were signs of something carefully placed and preserved. His excitement grew, but so did his caution. He could sense that he was on the verge of uncovering something extraordinary, and he did not want to risk damaging it. Finally, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Thomas felt he had done all he could for the day. He stepped back, wiped the sweat from his brow, and admired his careful work. The tree, the lump, and the hollow were now clearer than ever, but the mystery had not yet been solved. It would take another day, another careful approach, to reveal the secrets hidden inside. As he walked back home through the forest, Thomas felt a sense of awe and anticipation. He had uncovered hints of a story that had remained hidden for decades, maybe centuries. The carvings, the hollow, the warmth of the lump, all pointed to something remarkable. He knew that the next step would bring answers, but he also knew that patience was essential. The forest had revealed a secret, and he had been trusted to uncover it carefully and respectfully. And so, Thomas returned home that night, full of thoughts and plans. He couldn't stop thinking about the tree, the hollow, and the strange carvings. He felt a quiet excitement, knowing that he was on the edge of a discovery that would change everything he had ever known about the forest. The investigation had only just begun, but he could feel that the answers were near. He had taken the first steps into a mystery that would remain with him forever, a story hidden in the heart of the forest, waiting for the right person to uncover it. The morning sun was barely rising when Thomas awoke. Sleep had been restless the night before, his mind spinning with thoughts of the mysterious lump on the oak tree. Every shadow in his cabin seemed to echo the shape of the round growth, and even the soft creak of the floorboards reminded him of the tree. He knew that today was the day. Today, he would uncover the secret that had been hidden for decades, maybe centuries. He dressed quickly, putting on his worn gloves and sturdy boots. His tools were carefully packed and ready, the axe, the saw, and his small probing instruments that he had been using for the investigation. Each item had been cleaned, sharpened, and prepared with precision. This was not a simple task of cutting wood. This was a delicate operation, a careful unveiling of something that had been preserved in secrecy. The forest greeted him with its usual calm, yet there was a different energy in the air. The wind whispered through the branches as if carrying a message, and the birds' morning song seemed unusually soft, almost hushed. Thomas felt a thrill of anticipation as he walked along the familiar trail, following the path he had walked so many times before. Yet today, everything felt different. The forest itself seemed to be aware that something extraordinary was about to happen. As he approached the old oak, Thomas stopped for a moment to take in its presence. The lump looked just as it had for days, but it now carried a sense of promise, a quiet invitation. Thomas knelt and brushed away the leaves and moss that had accumulated at its base. The hollow beneath the growth was slightly larger than he had expected, revealing just a glimpse of what lay inside. His heart pounded with excitement. He reached out and touched the smooth surface of the lump, feeling the warmth radiating from it once more. He began to work carefully, using his tools to gently loosen the bark around the lump. Every movement was precise. He tested the edges, making sure not to damage what lay beneath. Hours passed as he methodically worked, his hands steady despite the rising anticipation. Small particles of bark fell to the ground, and Thomas carefully brushed them aside, revealing more of the hollow. Each inch uncovered heightened the suspense, as if the tree itself were revealing its secret slowly, piece by piece. Finally, after hours of careful work, Thomas managed to create an opening just large enough to peer inside. At first, he could see only darkness, but as his eyes adjusted, he noticed shapes within the hollow. There were objects clearly placed with intention. Thomas's pulse quickened. He reached in slowly, feeling the contours of something smooth and solid. Pulling it out, he discovered a small collection of items, each more astonishing than the last. The first object was a carved wooden figure, small but incredibly detailed. It depicted a figure sitting in a meditative pose, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. The craftsmanship was unlike anything Thomas had ever seen. Beside it were several small metallic trinkets, weathered by time but still shining faintly in the sunlight. Each trinket seemed to carry a story, as if they had been carefully chosen and placed for a reason that only the original owner knew. Thomas's eyes widened as he pulled out a small, weathered diary. Its leather cover was cracked with age and the pages were yellowed, but the writing inside was still legible. He opened it carefully, afraid that the fragile pages might tear. The diary contained entries that described daily life in the forest, but also hinted at something far more mysterious. The writer spoke of hidden treasures, secret paths, and rituals performed under the light of the moon. Thomas could hardly believe what he was reading. It was as if he had discovered a lost world, preserved in secret by someone long ago. The more Thomas examined the objects, the more questions arose. Who had hidden these items? Why had they chosen this particular tree? And what was the significance of the carvings and trinkets? Each object seemed carefully placed, almost as if it were part of a puzzle waiting for someone to solve. Thomas realized that he had stumbled upon something far beyond a simple natural curiosity. This was a secret preserved with intention, meant to be discovered by someone observant and patient enough to notice it. As he continued to explore the hollow, Thomas found more items tucked into hidden corners. Small bundles of dried herbs, tiny scrolls with symbols he didn't recognize, and even a small, sealed vial containing a liquid that had not evaporated despite the years. The forest around him seemed to grow quieter as he worked, the usual sounds of birds and wind fading into silence. It was as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, watching him uncover a story that had been waiting for generations. Hours passed like minutes. Thomas was so engrossed in his discovery that he barely noticed the sun climbing higher in the sky. He carefully cataloged each item, making notes in his own notebook and sketching the carvings he found. Every detail mattered, every observation could be a clue. He felt a sense of connection with the person who had hidden these treasures. They had trusted the forest and chosen it as a guardian of their secrets. Now, Thomas understood that he had been chosen to continue that trust. Suddenly, a faint rustling caught his attention. Thomas looked up, expecting to see an animal or perhaps a fellow lumberjack, but the forest was empty. The sound came again, soft and deliberate. He felt a shiver of excitement run down his spine. Could it be that the forest itself was responding to his actions? Or was someone else nearby, observing as he uncovered these secrets? Thomas decided to remain still, listening intently. The rustling stopped, leaving only the gentle whisper of the wind through the leaves. He shook his head, smiling at his own imagination, but the sense of mystery remained. As he returned to the hollow, Thomas noticed something he had missed before. There was a small cavity at the back of the opening, almost hidden from view. He reached in carefully and pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside were several small, intricately carved stones, each with symbols similar to those in the diary. The stones seemed to radiate a faint energy, a warmth that Thomas could feel even through his gloves. He held them in his hands, marveling at their craftsmanship and wondering about their purpose. The diary offered no clear explanation, but it hinted at a connection between the objects. The carvings, the trinkets, the herbs, and the stones were all part of a carefully preserved collection. The writer had hidden them with intention, protecting them from the outside world. Thomas realized that he was not merely uncovering a collection of old items. He was discovering a story, a life preserved in secrecy. Each object carried a piece of history, a fragment of someone's experience and knowledge. By late afternoon, Thomas had fully explored the hollow. He sat back on his heels, exhausted but exhilarated. The collection he had uncovered was extraordinary, unlike anything he had ever encountered in his decades of working in the forest. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the person who had hidden these items, preserving their story for someone like him to discover. It was a reminder that even in a familiar forest, mysteries could exist, waiting patiently for the right person to uncover them. Thomas carefully placed each item back into the hollow, making sure they were secure and protected. He covered the opening partially, leaving the lump intact so that the tree could continue to guard its secrets. The discovery had been breathtaking, but he knew that the story was far from over. The objects, the diary, and the carvings were just the beginning. There were still questions to answer, mysteries to unravel, and connections to make. As he walked back home through the forest, Thomas felt a sense of awe and wonder. He had uncovered something remarkable, a secret preserved through time, and he had done so with care and respect. The forest, which had always been a place of work and reflection, had revealed a hidden story, and Thomas had been chosen to witness it. He could feel that his life had changed, that he had stepped into a world of mystery and discovery that would stay with him forever. That night, Thomas could barely sleep. He thought about the carvings, the diary, the trinkets, and the stones. He imagined the person who had hidden them, their life in the forest, and the reasons for preserving their secrets. He felt a deep connection across time, a bridge between his life and the life of someone long gone. The revelation had been shocking, more than he could have imagined, and yet it felt like the beginning of something much larger. Thomas knew that he had uncovered the treasure the tree had been guarding, but the true value was not in the objects themselves. It was in the story, the mystery, and the connection to a life that had been preserved with care. The forest had entrusted him with this secret, and he would honor that trust by continuing to observe, study, and protect it. The shocking revelation had transformed his understanding of the forest, of history, and of the quiet mysteries that surround us, waiting patiently to be discovered. After uncovering the remarkable hidden collection in the old oak tree, Thomas returned home that evening with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The forest had given him a secret, one that had been carefully preserved for decades, maybe even centuries. As he sat in his cabin, he could hardly focus on anything else. The carvings, the diary, the stones, and the small trinkets occupied his every thought. He realized that this discovery was more than just a fascinating find. It was a bridge connecting him to someone who had lived long before his time. Thomas spent the night reviewing his notes and sketches. He tried to piece together the story of the person who had hidden the treasures, imagining the life they had led in the forest. Each entry in the diary revealed glimpses of a past world, of days spent walking among the trees, observing wildlife, and protecting the secrets they had chosen to preserve. The symbols carved into the stones and wood seemed to have meaning beyond what he could understand, as if they were part of a larger puzzle meant to be unraveled by someone patient enough to notice. In the days that followed, Thomas returned to the oak multiple times. Each visit brought new discoveries. He noticed patterns he had missed before, the way certain sunlight illuminated the hollow at different times of the day, the subtle paths worn into the earth by small animals, and even the peculiar behavior of the birds that seemed to guard the tree from above. It was as if the forest itself was alive with a story, and the tree had been at the center of it all. Word of Thomas's discovery eventually spread to the local community. Fellow lumberjacks, curious neighbors, and even a few historians came to see the remarkable tree and the hollow it contained. They were astonished by the craftsmanship of the carvings, the intricate details of the small trinkets, and the careful preservation of the diary. Experts marveled at the collection, suggesting that it might have belonged to a forest dweller or a person who had lived in harmony with nature long before the modern era. Thomas watched as people examined the items, feeling a mix of pride and reverence. He had discovered something extraordinary, but he also understood that it was a story to be respected, not just a collection of curiosities to be examined. Among the visitors, a local historian named Elena showed particular interest in the find. She had spent years studying the region's history and had encountered mentions of mysterious forest dwellers who were known for preserving artifacts in secret locations. She examined the diary closely, pointing out symbols and patterns that Thomas had not noticed. Together, they began to unravel the story of the person who had hidden the treasures. Elena suggested that the carvings and trinkets might have been used as part of personal rituals or symbolic practices, reflecting a deep connection with the forest and its rhythms. Thomas and Elena spent weeks working together, documenting every detail of the hollow, the carvings, and the items inside. They carefully photographed each object, sketched the symbols, and even measured the dimensions of the hollow to ensure accurate records. The process was meticulous and sometimes exhausting, but Thomas found it deeply rewarding. He felt a sense of purpose, knowing that he was helping preserve the story of someone who had lived long ago. The forest had entrusted him with its secret, and he was determined to honor that trust. As the days passed, Thomas also noticed subtle changes in himself. He felt a stronger connection to the forest than ever before, a sense of being part of something larger and more enduring. The discovery had reminded him that the world was full of hidden stories, waiting patiently to be uncovered by those who took the time to notice. He found himself walking more slowly through the forest, observing the details of each tree, each leaf, and each animal. Life seemed richer, more vivid, and more mysterious than ever before. One afternoon, while examining the hollow with a leaner, Thomas discovered a new detail he had missed in his initial investigations. There was a faint inscription on the inside of the hollow, almost invisible without careful inspection. It appeared to be a message left by the person who had hidden the treasures, a short note expressing hope that the collection would be discovered and respected by someone patient and observant. Thomas felt a profound sense of connection at that moment. He realized that he was not just uncovering objects. He was engaging in a dialogue across time, communicating with someone who had lived long before him. The discovery also brought unexpected visitors to the forest. Families, nature enthusiasts, and local schoolchildren came to see the tree, eager to learn about the mysterious hollow and the treasures it contained. Thomas welcomed them, sharing the story carefully and emphasizing the importance of respecting the forest and its secrets. He felt a deep satisfaction in watching others marvel at the discovery, knowing that the story would live on and continue to inspire curiosity and wonder. The tree had become more than a single discovery. It was now a symbol of the enduring mysteries that nature holds and the importance of observation and care. Despite the growing attention, Thomas remained cautious. He knew that the hollow and its treasures needed protection, and he took steps to ensure that the site was respected. He marked the area discreetly, warned visitors to be careful, and collaborated with local authorities to create guidelines for preserving the tree and its surroundings. His goal was not fame or recognition, but to ensure that the story of the forest and its hidden secrets could continue to inspire and educate future generations. As the seasons changed, the forest around the oak tree transformed. Leaves turned golden and fell, snow blanketed the ground in winter, and new growth emerged in spring. Through it all, Thomas continued to visit, observing the subtle changes in the tree and its environment. Each season seemed to reveal new details, reminding him that nature was never static, and that mysteries could unfold slowly over time. He felt a renewed sense of humility and respect for the forest, understanding that he was only one small part of its ongoing story. The diary, carvings, and trinkets remained central to Thomas's reflections. He spent long evenings reading and studying the entries, trying to understand the thoughts and experiences of the person who had hidden them. Each page revealed a life lived with care, observation, and respect for the natural world. Thomas realized that the true value of the discovery was not material, but in the lessons it offered about patience, curiosity, and the enduring power of nature's secrets. Over time, Thomas became a quiet guide for others interested in the forest. He shared his knowledge of the trees, the wildlife, and the hidden treasures in ways that encouraged observation and respect. Visitors learned to slow down, to notice the small details, and to appreciate the subtle wonders of the natural world. Thomas felt a deep sense of fulfillment in helping others connect with the forest, knowing that the mysterious oak had taught him lessons that extended far beyond the hollow and its treasures. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with shades of gold and pink, Thomas stood before the oak tree, reflecting on everything that had happened. The forest was quiet, save for the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for the discovery, for the person who had hidden the treasures, and for the forest itself. The journey had been filled with mystery, excitement, and revelation, but it had also taught him patience, respect, and the importance of careful observation. Thomas knew that the story of the oak tree and its hollow would continue long after he was gone. Others would come to the forest, notice the peculiar lump, and uncover its secrets. The carvings, trinkets, and diary would inspire new generations to observe, learn, and appreciate the hidden wonders around them. He felt comforted knowing that he had played a role in preserving the mystery, ensuring that it could continue to spark curiosity and wonder for years to come. In the quiet moments, Thomas often thought about the person who had hidden the treasures. He imagined their life in the forest, their careful planning, and their hope that someone patient and observant would eventually discover the hollow. He felt a connection across time, a silent conversation that transcended generations. The forest had revealed a secret, and in doing so, it had given him a gift far greater than he could have imagined. A deeper understanding of nature, history, and the enduring power of human curiosity. As months turned into years, Thomas continued his visits, never tiring of observing the oak tree and the hollow. He noted how the carvings weathered with time, how the trinkets remained surprisingly intact, and how the diary, though fragile, continued to reveal the thoughts and experiences of its long-gone owner. Each visit brought new reflections, new questions, and new insights. The forest remained alive with mystery, and the oak tree stood as a testament to the secrets that patiently await discovery. Eventually, Thomas shared his story more widely, writing down his experiences and observations in a journal of his own. He described the discovery, the investigation, the shocking revelation, and the aftermath, emphasizing the lessons learned along the way. He wanted others to understand that the true treasure was not in the objects themselves, but in the act of discovery, the respect for nature, and the connection across time that the forest had made possible. In the end, Thomas realized that the old oak tree had given him more than just a hidden collection. It had given him a new perspective on life, a renewed sense of wonder, and a story that would continue to inspire curiosity and respect for generations to come. The forest, with all its mysteries, had chosen him as its witness, and he accepted that role with gratitude and humility. As he stood once more before the tree, the sun casting long shadows across the forest floor, Thomas smiled. He had uncovered a secret, experienced a revelation, and helped preserve a story that had waited decades to be told. The forest was alive with history, mystery, and quiet magic, and he felt fortunate to be a part of it. The oak tree, with its peculiar lump and hidden hollow, would remain a symbol of patience, curiosity, and the extraordinary stories that lie hidden in the world around us, waiting for someone to notice.